Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are so glad you're here.
Great to be here.
Today, I want to start with a question that I think, if we're being totally honest with ourselves, kind of haunts pretty much every human interaction we have.
Okay.
It's the elephant in the room at your high school reunion. It's the subtext of every corporate performance review, and it is definitely the vibe in the VIP section of a club.
You're talking about status.
I'm talking about status,
The pecking.
a pecking order,
Mhm.
the ranking. We all have this, internal radar that is constantly scanning the room to answer one specific question. Who is winning?
Right. Who's the alpha?
Exactly. Who's the most important person here? Who has the most influence? Who is, the greatest?
It's a universal human drive. I mean, you can look at it from so many angles. Evolutionary biologists would tell you it's about survival, securing resources.
Right. The strongest gets the best food.
Exactly. And sociologists would say it's about power dynamics, social structures.
Yeah.
But you see it everywhere. You see it in wolf packs, and you see it in the break room when everyone waits to see where the CEO is going to sit for lunch.
Totally. It's just baked into us. And the reason we're bringing this up is because today we are diving into an ancient text that takes that entire framework, everything we assume about how to get ahead, how to win, how to be great, and it basically throws it into a wood chipper.
That is a very vivid way to put it, but yes, it's an accurate one.
And the text is Matthew chapter 18.
Yes. And I think people often read this chapter as a collection of nice, sort of disjointed sayings. You know, you have the Sunday school story about the lost sheep.
Sure, I remember the felt board version.
Right. And then you have a rule about forgiveness, and you have that one verse people quote at prayer meetings. But when you actually stack the sources, when you look at the original Greek, the archaeology of first century Capernaum, and the historical context, this chapter is actually one single cohesive argument.
And it's not a gentle argument.
No, it's radical. It's disruptive. It reads like a constitution for a completely new kind of society, a community that functions almost exactly opposite to the world we live in.
So we've got a lot to cover. We're going to talk about children. We're going to talk about millstones, which are way, way scarier than I realized.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to talk about conflict resolution, a sort of kingdom HR manual. And we are going to do some serious math regarding debt.
The math is staggering.
But let's start with the scene. This is Matthew 18, verse 1. Set the stage for us. Where are we, and what's the mood in the room?
So most scholars agree we're likely in Capernaum. This was Jesus's sort of home base for his ministry in the north, in Galilee.
Right, on the shore of the sea.
Exactly. And they're probably in a house, maybe Peter's house, which archaeologists think they have actually found. The mood is, well, the disciples have something on their minds. They come to Jesus with a question that has clearly been burning a hole in their pockets.
They just come right out and say it. No subtlety.
None at all. They ask, who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?
I love the lack of self-awareness here.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys have been walking with Jesus, watching him serve people, watching him wash feet, watching him dodge praise, and they are still obsessing over the org chart.
Well, you have to sympathize with them a little bit. In their world, in the first century, honor was the currency. It wasn't just money, it was honor, your public reputation.
So status was security.
It was everything. If you had high status, you had security, you had influence, you were safe. If you had low status, you were vulnerable. So they aren't just asking out of, pure vanity. They're asking about their place in the coming administration.
The administration.
Yeah, they assume Jesus is about to kick out the Romans and set up a new kingdom on earth. So they're asking the practical questions. Who is going to be the prime minister? Who is Secretary of State?
Where do I fit in? What's my title going to be?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
They're looking for a metric. They want Jesus to give them the KPI, the key performance indicator for greatness. Is it the one who memorizes the most Torah? Is it the one who performs the most miracles?
Is it the one with the best bloodline?
Yeah.
From a good family.
All of those are on the table.
Yeah.
They want a checklist. And Jesus, being Jesus, doesn't give them a metric. He gives them a prop.
He calls a little child to him and places the child among them.
Right in the middle of this circle of ambitious men.
Okay, I want to pause here because this is so critical. I think we read this through 21st century Western glasses. When we see a child, we think cute, innocent, the future.
The center of our universe.
Absolutely. We obsess over our kids. We have baby on board stickers. The entire Modern Family unit is built around the child. So when Jesus puts a child in the center, we think, He's saying we should be sweet and innocent.
And that is the exact opposite of how a first-century audience would have reacted. We have to strip away all that modern sentimentality.
So what would they have seen?
In the ancient Near East, and specifically in Roman Judea, a child, the Greek word here is paidion, which means a small child, not a teenager, was essentially a non-person in terms of social standing.
A non-person. That sounds incredibly harsh.
It is harsh to our ears, but it was the reality. Children had no legal rights, they couldn't own property, they couldn't testify in court.
They had no voice.
No voice, no economic power. They were completely dependent, weak, and vulnerable. In the hierarchy of who matters, the child was at the absolute bottom. Below women, below slaves.
Wow. So if you're a disciple and you're arguing about who is going to be the CEO, and Jesus brings in an intern who isn't even on the payroll?
It's more like he brings in someone from off the street who has literally zero leverage, zero connections, zero anything, and he puts that person in the chairman's seat.
And then he says in verse 3, truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven.
That's the bombshell.
That word change, I was looking at the notes you sent over. It's strephet in Greek.
Yes, strephet. And the verb tense is important. It's what's called an aorist passive. The disciples are being commanded to be turned or to allow yourselves to be changed. It's not just try harder. It's a fundamental reorientation that has to happen to you.
And the root word, streph.
It means to turn or to twist. It's a very physical word. It's used elsewhere for turning a body around. It implies a 180-degree U-turn.
So he's not just saying tweak your attitude a little bit.
No, he's saying the direction you're walking is completely wrong. You are walking toward ambition, toward power, toward status. You are climbing the ladder up. You need to stop, turn around, and start climbing the ladder down. You need to convert your entire way of thinking about what matters.
That is the paradox that really drives this whole deep dive, isn't it? To go up, you have to go down.
That's the core principle of this new kingdom. And verse 4 really hammers it home. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven.
So greatness in Jesus' economy is actually what?
Yeah.
Is it just low self-esteem?
Yeah.
Is it thinking you're worthless?
No, not at all. It's not about having low self-esteem. It's about having no self-reliance. Think about that child again. A child doesn't worry about their 401k because they don't have one.
They're not checking their stock portfolio.
Exactly. A child doesn't worry about their political connections because they don't have any. A child trusts the parent for everything. For food, for shelter, for safety, because they have to. They are utterly dependent.
So spiritual humility is just recognizing reality.
It's recognizing your total dependence on God for everything. It's resigning as the CEO of your own life and accepting that you are, in a spiritual sense, a toddler who can't even walk without help.
That is utterly terrifying for high performers. For anyone in the modern world, we build our whole lives around not being dependent. We want financial independence. We want autonomy. We want screw you money.
Exactly. Which is why Jesus says you can't even enter the kingdom unless you make this turn. The kingdom is a place for people who know they are needy. If you think you're self-sufficient, you won't fit through the door. The door is child-sized.
Wow. And then he takes it a step further in verse 5. It's not just about becoming the child. It's about how you treat the child.
Yes. Whoever welcomes one such little child in my name welcomes me.
This is the social revolution part, isn't it?
This is where it gets really practical. In the ancient world, you treated people well based on what they could do for you. It was a culture of patronage. You honored the rich because they might invest in you. You honored the powerful because they could protect you or grant you favors.
You ignored the child.
You ignored the child because the child could do nothing for you. They were a drain on resources. Welcoming them was a net loss.
It was purely transactional.
Completely transactional. And Jesus is breaking the transaction. He says when you welcome the person who has zero status, the person who can offer you absolutely nothing in return, you are actually welcoming God himself.
That completely rewires how you walk into a networking event.
Or a church foyer.
Right. You stop scanning the room for the important people, the people who can help your career.
You start looking for the invisible people, the lonely person in the corner, the newcomer who doesn't know anyone, because that's where Jesus says he is hiding, in the disguise of the insignificant.
Okay, so that's the warm-up. We've established the foundational principle. Up is down, small is great, the child is the model. But then, man, the tone shifts so fast. I was reading ahead in the script, and I honestly got a little freaked out.
It's an abrupt transition.
It's like Jesus goes from holding a kid and talking about humility to talking like, I don't know, mafia enforcer.
That certainly sounds like it.
We are entering the millstone section,
Yeah.
verse 6. Jesus says, if anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for him to have a large millstone hung around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea.
It is arguably one of the most violent images in all the Gospels.
Okay, let's get into the weeds here. Millstone. When I hear that word, I picture, I don't know, like a small stone you use in the kitchen to grind pepper or something, maybe the size of a grapefruit.
Right, a hand mill. And if you hung a grapefruit-sized stone around your neck and jumped in a pool, you could probably swim to the surface. It would be annoying but not fatal.
Exactly. It doesn't sound like the worst fate imaginable.
That is absolutely not what Jesus is talking about. The Greek text is very specific. It specifies a milos onikos.
Milos Onikos. Say that again?
Milos onikos. The literal translation is a donkey millstone.
A donkey millstone.
Yes. These were not the small handstones that women would use in the courtyard to grind flour for their family's bread. These were the industrial-sized grinding stones for a whole village.
Okay, paint a picture. What did that look like?
We have found them in the excavations at Capernaum. They are made of black basalt, which is a very dense, heavy volcanic rock. They are huge circular stones, about 4 or 5 feet in diameter, and they can weigh upwards of 300, even 400 pounds.
300 pounds, yeah.
At least. They were called donkey millstones because no human was strong enough to turn the top stone. You had to hook up a beast of burden, a donkey or an ox, to rotate the stone to grind the grain for the entire community.
So imagine a 300-pound slab of volcanic rock chained to your neck.
A dense, heavy rock, and then you were thrown not just into the water, but into the depths of the sea.
The text is specific about that, too.
Very. And remember, for a Jewish audience, the sea wasn't a vacation spot. The sea was the abyss. It was the place of chaos and death. Leviathan lived there in their mythology. To be drowned in the depths was a horrifying thought. It meant disappearing into the void with no proper burial.
And Jesus, the guy who says, love your enemies, turn the other cheek, is saying that this horror movie ending is better.
It is the preferable option.
Better than the alternative. Better than causing a little one to stumble.
Yes. That's how seriously he takes it.
Okay, we have to define stumble, because this is terrifying. If I accidentally offend someone or I make a joke they don't like, am I now in danger of the donkey millstone? What does this word actually mean?
It's a crucial question. The Greek word is scandalizo. It's where we get our English word scandal. But the root meaning, the noun scandalon, is very specific. A scandalon was the stick in a trap that holds the bait.
The trigger.
Exactly. It's the trigger mechanism. When the animal comes along and nudges that stick to get the bait, the trap snaps shut.
So it's a death trap.
It's a death trap. So when the Bible talks about a stumbling block, it's not talking about a minor offense or a breach of etiquette. It's not about hurting someone's feelings. It is talking about doing something that causes another person to fall away from their faith. It's about leading someone into sin or into spiritual ruin.
So this is spiritual sabotage. This is actively destroying someone's relationship with God.
Precisely. Jesus is looking at these little ones, these new believers, these humble people who have put their trust in him, and he is acting like a mama bear protecting her cubs. He is saying, these souls are so precious to God, so valuable, that if you are the reason one of them is destroyed, it would be better for you to have died a violent, premature death before you ever had the chance to do it.
That creates such a heavy sense of responsibility. I mean, we usually think about my walk with God as a personal, individual thing, but this says my walk deeply affects your walk.
We are interconnected. We are a body. If my cynicism or my unchecked sin or my hypocrisy causes a new believer to look at me and say, well, if that's what Christianity is, I'm out, then I have become a scandalon. I've become the trapstick.
And Jesus doesn't stop with the millstone. He pivots from a warning about others to a warning about yourself. This is a section that, I'll be honest, sounds like something a cult leader would say if you take it out of context. Verse 8, if your hand or your foot causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away.
It's jarring.
And then verse 9, and if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. I mean, come on. Is he being literal here? Because if he is, church services would look a lot different. There'd be a lot of missing limbs.
Right. And historically, we know the early church did not practice self-mutilation. Origen is a rare exception who took a simile passage about eunuchs literally, and he was later criticized for it. The church understood this was a common rhetorical device. It's Semitic hyperbole.
Explain that term, Semitic hyperbole.
It's a teaching style common in Jewish culture at the time. You use extreme graphic exaggeration to convey the absolute seriousness of a point. It's designed to shock you into listening. It's like when we say, I'm so hungry I could eat a horse.
Right? We don't mean we are literally going to consume a horse.
We mean our hunger is desperate. Jesus is using this shocking language to communicate the desperation we should feel about our own sin.
So cut off your hand is a metaphor for what?
He's saying that sin is not a toy, it's not a minor flaw, it is a cancer. And if you have something in your life, even something as useful and valuable as a hand or as precious as an eye, that is consistently leading you into sin, you need to perform radical surgery. You need to get rid of it.
So translate that into a modern context. What is a hand or an eye today?
Well, it could be 1,000 things. It could be a relationship that's dragging you down. It could be a career that requires you to be dishonest, and that dishonesty is rotting your soul.
It could be your smartphone.
It could absolutely be your smartphone. If your phone is a gateway to addiction or envy or time wasting that pulls you away from God, Jesus is saying, get rid of it, get a flip phone, even if it feels like cutting off a limb in today's world.
It's a calculation of value. He keeps repeating the phrase, it is better. It is better for you to enter life maimed or crippled than to have 2 hands or 2 feet and be thrown into eternal fire.
It's the ultimate cost-benefit analysis. He's saying, what are you willing to lose now to gain everything later? It's better to go through this life crippled, meaning missing out on some worldly pleasures or advantages, than to be whole by the world's standards and lose your soul.
And he mentions this place. He uses the word Gehenna.
Yeah.
And usually that word just gets translated in English Bibles as hell. But Gehenna was a specific place on the map, right?
It was. You can go there today. It's the Valley of Hinnom, just south and west of the old city of Jerusalem. But in the 1st century, it had a horrific reputation. It was a place with a dark, dark history.
What happened there?
Well, you have to go back to the Old Testament, to the books of Kings and Chronicles. In the days of the wicked kings like Ahaz and Manasseh, this valley was the center of idol worship to a pagan god named Molech.
And Molech worship involved.
Child sacrifice. They would build fiery furnaces inside statues of the idol and pass their children through the fire. It was the ultimate abomination in the eyes of the prophets.
Ugh, that's horrifying.
So the place was already associated with the worst kind of sin. Later, a good king, King Josiah, came along and desecrated the place to stop the sacrifices. He turned it into the city dump.
The city dump.
Yes. By the time of Jesus, it had become the garbage pit for Jerusalem. They would throw refuse, dead animals, the bodies of criminals who weren't given a proper burial. And because there was so much organic waste, fires were constantly burning there to consume the refuse and prevent disease.
So imagine the sensory experience, the smell of burning trash and decay, the constant smoke, the worms and maggots.
Exactly. So when Jesus says, if you don't cut off the sin, you will be thrown into Gehenna, his listeners would have immediately pictured that disgusting, burning, worm-infested valley. He's conjuring up this sensory nightmare.
He's saying, if you hold on to your sin, you are choosing the cosmic trash heap. You are choosing a life and an eternity that is wasted, useless, and perpetually in torment. A place of total ruin.
It's an incredibly powerful and disturbing image. It
Yeah.
really raises the stakes. We aren't just talking about being naughty. We're talking about the difference between eternal life and the cosmic dump.
Right. And that intensity, that desperate desire to save people from the dump is what leads, kind of surprisingly, into the next section.
It's a perfect transition.
Because you might think, with all this talk of millstones and cutting off hands, that God is this angry tyrant just waiting to smash people. But then the tone shifts again. We move from the warning to the rescue.
The parable of the lost sheep.
But before we get to the sheep, there's this weird little verse tucked in there about angels. Verse 10. See that you do not look down on any of these little ones, for I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven.
This is a fascinating nugget of angelology. It's one of the few places we get a hint about this.
So what does it mean? Is it saying everyone has a guardian angel, like in the movies?
The text seems to imply that these little ones, these humble believers, have some kind of angelic representatives. The early church fathers certainly debated what that meant, but the key phrase is, always see the face of my Father.
Why is that the key?
Well, think about any royal court, ancient or modern. Who gets to see the king's face?
The inner circle, the top advisors, the people with direct access.
Exactly. If you're a peasant, you might see the king from a distance on a parade route. But if you see his face, it means you have his ear. You have access to the throne room. Jesus is saying that the angels assigned to the humblest, poorest, most insignificant believer on earth have the highest security clearance in heaven.
So if I look down on a little one, if I dismiss them, I'm messing with someone who has a direct line to the Oval Office.
That is a very good way to put it. You're not just offending them. You are engaging with a heavenly security detail that reports directly to the King of the universe.
And then, to explain why God cares so much, to illustrate this incredible value, Jesus tells the story of the sheep.
Right. He asks a question. What do you think? If a man has 100 sheep and one of them goes astray, will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go out to search for the one that is lost?
Now, I want to stop you here, because we've all heard this story so many times in church that we just nod along. Oh, yes, the lovely shepherd, how nice. But from a business perspective, this is insanity.
It's terrible business.
I mean, just do the math. You have 100 assets, you lose 1%. In any modern business, that's just shrinkage. It's the cost of doing business. You write it off. You absolutely do not leave the other 90 your core capital unprotected in the wild to go chase the 1% that might already be dead. That's bad risk management.
It is terrible risk management. And the source material on shepherding culture in the Judean hills makes this even clearer. They might leave the 99 in a protected sheepfold with helpers, but the shepherd himself is going out alone.
Into dangerous terrain.
Very dangerous.
Right.
Ravines, caves, cliffs, predators like wolves or bears. This wasn't a casual stroll in a green pasture. The shepherd is risking his life, his comfort, his energy to find the one stupid sheep that wandered off. The rational move is to cut your losses and secure the majority.
So why does the shepherd go?
Because the kingdom of God is not a business, it's a family.
Right.
And in a family, you don't calculate the return on investment of your children. If you have 3 kids and one goes missing from the mall, you don't say, well, I still have 66% of my kids safe. That's a passing grade. Let's go home.
No, you tear the world apart to find that one.
You tear the world apart because every single one is infinitely valuable. That's the point. And the goal is rescue.
Verse 14 says, "In the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish."
That word perish, it's apolitai in Greek. It means to be destroyed, to be lost completely. The shepherd is on a search and rescue mission to prevent ultimate ruin.
And the joy when he finds it. Verse 13, "And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he rejoices more over that one sheep than over the 99 that did not go astray."
It's what you might call the economics of grace. The value of the one lost soul in that moment of rescue brings more joy than the stability of the entire collective. It tells us that God is not just managing a herd. He knows every single name.
Okay, so let's recap where we are. We've learned that the little ones are the greatest. We've learned we need to be terrified of causing them to stumble. We've learned that if they wander, God personally chases them down. But let's be real, sometimes the little ones aren't wandering off. Sometimes they are right here in the community, and they are being jerks to each other.
Sheep headbutt. It happens. It's messy.
And that brings us to what I've started calling the Kingdom HR Manual. Because Jesus shifts from this high theology of value and rescue to very specific, practical instructions on what to do when conflict happens inside the community.
This is verses 15 through 20. And honestly, this is some of the most practical and ignored advice in the entire Bible. If people actually followed this 4-step process, our divorce courts and our social media feeds would look profoundly different.
Let's walk through the steps slowly. Step 1, verse 15. If your brother or sister sins against you, go and point out their fault, just between the two of you.
Stop right there. That first clause is revolutionary, just between the two of you. What is the modern human impulse when someone wrongs us?
Oh, that's easy. Screenshot the text message. Post it on Instagram stories with a vague, passive-aggressive caption. So disappointed in some people right now.
Or you call your 3 best friends.
You call your friends, you go to brunch, and you tell them the whole story so they can validate how right you are and how horrible the other person is.
Exactly. We triangulate. We bring in third parties immediately to build a coalition against the person who hurt us. We vent, we gossip, we shame. Jesus says, do the absolute opposite. Keep the circle as small as possible, just you and them.
And why? What's the goal?
The goal is not to win the argument. The text is clear. The goal is to win your brother.
If they listen to you, you have won them over.
If I blast you in public, your walls go up. You get defensive. You have to save face. But if I come to you privately, quietly, and say, hey, when you said that, it really hurt me, you have a chance to listen, to understand, and to apologize with your dignity intact. The goal is reconciliation.
Okay, but what if that doesn't work? What if you go to them privately and they say, get lost, you're being too sensitive? Then what? Step 2.
Verse 16. But if they will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses.
So is this just bringing back up for a fight?
Yeah.
Ganging up on them?
No, not at all. He's quoting the Old Testament law here. This is a direct reference to Deuteronomy 19. The law of Moses required 2 or 3 witnesses to establish a fact in a legal proceeding.
So this is about establishing the truth? It's like an investigation.
It's about objectivity. These 1 or 2 others are there to be neutral arbiters. They are there to listen to both sides. Maybe you are the one who is actually being unreasonable and you need to hear it from someone else, or maybe the other person really is in the wrong and they need to hear it from a neutral party to finally realize it. It protects everyone.
It prevents a he said, she said situation. Okay, that makes sense. So step 3, if they still refuse to listen, even with witnesses.
Then and only then, he says, tell it to the church, the ecclesia, the gathered assembly.
This sounds like a public shaming. This is where it gets scary for me.
It sounds scary, but again, remember the context. This isn't a mob with pitchforks. This is supposed to be a community of people who have humbled themselves like children, who value each soul like a lost sheep. This is the whole family coming around the person and saying, we love you, but you are on a destructive path. Please, for your own sake, come back. It's a final corporate plea.
And if even that final plea fails, if they refuse to listen to the whole community, step 4.
This is the last resort. Treat them as you would a pagan or a tax collector.
Whoa, wait a minute. That sounds like a contradiction. Jesus was famous for hanging out with pagans and tax collectors. He ate with Matthew. He praised the faith of a Roman centurion. Is he telling us to be nice to them?
That's a very common confusion, and it's a great question. Jesus did love tax collectors and pagans, yes, but does he treat them as brothers in the faith, as part of the covenant community?
No. He treated them as people who were on the outside and needed to be brought in.
Exactly. He treated them as people who needed to hear the gospel. So treating them as a pagan doesn't mean being mean to them. It means you stop pretending everything is fine. You recognize that by their unrepentant sin, they have placed themselves outside the fellowship.
So the relationship has fundamentally changed.
Correct. You can't have fellowship with them as if nothing happened. You have to withdraw that intimate community connection, what the church later called excommunication, in the hopes that the isolation will finally wake them up to the seriousness of their actions. Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians. It's a severe mercy, a last-ditch effort to save them.
And right in the middle of this legal procedure, Jesus drops this famous line about binding and loosing, and then the 2 or 3 verse. Yeah. Verse 20, for where 2 or 3 gather in my name, there am I with them.
And I have heard this verse quoted at every sparsely attended prayer meeting I've ever been to in my life.
Right. Lord, only 3 of us showed up tonight, but you promised you'd be here, so here we are.
And while it's true that God is omnipresent, the direct context of this verse is not a cozy prayer meeting. The context is a formal, difficult, judicial hearing.
Judicial. How so?
Look at the verses right before it. He talks about witnesses, testimony. He talks about binding and loosing, which were rabbinic terms for forbidding and permitting something, for making a legal ruling. Jesus is talking to the church leaders who have to make these heartbreaking decisions to discipline someone. He is saying, when you gather even just 2 or 3 of you to deal with sin and conflict according to my process and in my name, I am the judge present in the room with you. My authority is there.
That gives me chills. It's that empty chair concept.
Yes. If you truly believed that Jesus was sitting at the table while you were discussing the conflict, how would your tone change? How much more careful would you be to be fair, to be merciful, to seek truth?
It adds so much weight and gravity to the process. It's not just a boring committee meeting. It's a holy convocation.
Precisely. It's a divine court.
Okay, so we've got the process. It's clear, it's difficult, but it's laid out. But then Peter, I love Peter. He's always the one to raise his hand and ask the question everyone else is thinking but is too afraid to say.
He is the class participation star. He's not afraid to look dumb.
So Peter listens to all this talk about reconciliation, and he starts doing some mental math. He's trying to quantify it. And in verse 21, he asks, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times.
Now, we need to pause and give Peter some credit here. He's not trying to be stingy. In that moment, I think he expects Jesus to pat him on the back and say, wow, Peter, that's incredibly generous. He thinks he's getting an A+ sat.
Why? 7 times sounds, I mean, it's a lot, but it's not infinite.
Because in the rabbinic tradition of that day, the general consensus was often 3 times. There was a debate, but a common teaching based on a reading of the book of Amos was that God forgave a nation for 3 transgressions, but on the 4th, punishment came. So the rabbis argued, if God forgives 3 times, who are we to do more?
Okay, so the standard is 3. Peter takes that, he doubles it to 6, and adds 1 for good measure. 7, the number of perfection. He thinks he is being a spiritual superhero.
He thinks he's being incredibly magnanimous. Look at me, Lord. I'm willing to go all the way to 7.
And Jesus looks at him and says,
I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times. Or as some translations put it, 70 times 7.
which is 490.
Right. But the point isn't that you're supposed to keep a tally sheet, and then on the 491st offense, you can finally punch the guy.
So it's not a literal number.
It's symbolic, and it's another one of those moments where you need the Old Testament context to get the full impact. Jesus is referencing an old, dark story from the book of Genesis, the story of Lamech.
Lamech. Okay, remind us of that one.
Lamech was a descendant of Cain, the first murderer. He is a violent warlord, and he embodies this escalating cycle of revenge. In Genesis chapter 4, he brags to his wives in a poem. He says, if Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times.
So he's vowing unlimited vengeance.
Exactly. The Song of the Sword. It's a vow of unlimited revenge. If you hurt me a little, I will hurt you back 77 times more. It's the logic of escalation that leads to blood feuds and war.
So Jesus is taking the Song of the Warlord, the anthem of unlimited vengeance, and he's flipping it on its head.
Exactly. He is replacing unlimited vengeance with unlimited mercy. He's saying, my kingdom operates on the exact inverse of Lamech's logic. The new song is a song of forgiveness.
And surely the disciples are standing there thinking, that's impossible. I mean, unlimited forgiveness. That's not how the world works. That's naive. If you forgive everyone everything, you'll get walked all over. You'll be a doormat.
And Jesus knows they're thinking that. He knows we can't just will ourselves to forgive like that. It's not in our nature. We need a reason. We need to understand the economics behind it. And that is why he tells the final and perhaps most devastating parable in the chapter.
The parable of the unforgiving servant.
Yes. And this is where the math gets absolutely crazy. I want us to really slow down and do the numbers here because I think we miss the joke or the tragedy if we don't.
Let's do it. Scene 1. A king wants to settle accounts with his servants. He brings in one servant who owes him 10,000 talents.
Okay, calculators out. To understand a talent, we first need to understand a smaller unit, a denarius. A denarius was a common silver coin, and it represented 1 standard day's wage for a common laborer.
Okay, so 1 denarius equals 1 day of work. Got it. That's our baseline.
Right. Now, a talent was not a coin. It was a unit of weight, usually of silver or gold, and 1 talent was worth roughly 6,000 denarii.
Okay, so let me do that math. 6,000 days of work. If you work, say, 300 days a year, that's 20 years.
Correct. 1 talent was equivalent to about 20 years of wages, a lifetime of earnings for the average person.
And this guy in the story owes 10,000 talents.
So multiply 20 years by 10,000.
That's or 200,000.
200,000 years of labor.
That is absurd. That's not a debt. That's the GDP of a small nation. That's a completely made-up number.
It is intentional hyperbole. It's meant to be an impossible astronomical sum. For context, historical records from Josephus tell us that the total annual tax revenue for Herod the Great, covering all of Judea, Samaria, Galilee, everything, was about 900 talents a year. This one servant owes more than 10 times the entire country's annual tax revenue.
So Jesus is painting a picture of a debt that is literally mathematically unpayable. Even if this guy and his children and his great-grandchildren worked every day for 100 lifetimes, they couldn't even pay off the interest.
He is completely, hopelessly bankrupt. He is dead to rights, and the king orders him to be sold, his wife, his kids, all his possessions, everything liquidated. And even that wouldn't make a dent. It's total ruin.
So the servant does the only thing he can. He falls on his knees, and he says something ridiculous. Be patient with me, and I will pay back everything.
Which is a delusion. He can't pay it back. He's just bargaining for his life, saying anything he can think of.
And then the twist. Verse 27. The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go.
Just like that. Wiped clean.
He didn't put him on a payment plan. He didn't just reduce the interest.
No. The Greek word aphemi means to release, to remit, to forgive completely. He canceled it. He absorbed the loss. 10,000 talents. Vaporized.
Can you just imagine the feeling? Walking out of that throne room, You went in a dead man owing 200,000 years of wages.
Mm.
You walk out with a zero balance. You'd be floating. You'd be kissing the ground. You'd want to hug everyone you see.
You would think so. You would think that experience of radical mercy would change you forever. But that brings us to scene 2.
The servant goes out, and he finds a fellow servant who owes him 100 denarii.
Back to the calculator. 1 denarius is 1 day's wage. So, 100 days' wages?
About 3 or 4 months of work.
Right. Now, let's be fair. That is not zero. If a friend borrowed 3 months of your salary, let's say $15,000 or $20,000 in modern terms, and just refused to pay it back, you'd be upset. It's a real debt.
Absolutely. I'll be making some phone calls. I might take him to small claims court.
For sure. But now compare the two numbers. You have a debt of 100 days, and you have the debt that was just forgiven, which was, what was 200,000 years in days? It's like 60 million days.
So it's 100 versus 60 million. It's a drop in the ocean. It's a rounding error. It's nothing.
And what does the forgiven servant do?
The text says he grabbed him and began to choke him, physically assaulting him, screaming, "Pay back what you owe me."
The violence of it is so shocking. He just left the presence of the king, who forgave him an astronomical, life-crushing sum, and now he's physically throttling a guy over what is essentially pocket change in comparison.
The fellow servant begs him. He uses the exact same posture, falls to his knees, and uses almost the exact same words, "Be patient with me, and I will pay it back."
And this time it's actually possible. You could pay back 100 denarii eventually, but the foreign servant refuses. He has him thrown in debtor's prison.
It just makes you sick to read it. You feel this righteous indignation bubbling up inside you. You're thinking, how dare you, you hypocrite?
And that is exactly how the other servants in the story feel. They are outraged, and they run and tell the master what happened.
And the master calls him back in, and the tone has changed completely. No more pity.
You.
He says, "You wicked servant, I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant just as I had on you?"
That is the thesis statement of the entire parable. It's the central question. Shouldn't you have had mercy just as I had on you? The logic is inescapable. You received an ocean of grace. You are therefore obligated to function as a conduit of grace to others. If you cap the pipe, the pressure builds up and destroys you.
And the punishment, this is the part that keeps me up at night, verse 34. In anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed.
The Greek word for jailers here, basanistais, can actually mean torturers. It's a grim, terrifying image. And think about the logic of the sentence. He is in prison until he pays the debt.
But the debt is 10,000 talents. And you can't earn money while you're being tortured in prison.
So, he's never getting out.
It's an image of eternal consequence. Because he refused to forgive a small payable debt, the massive unpayable debt he originally owed has been reinstated in full.
His lack of mercy proved he never truly understood the mercy he received.
And then Jesus turns from the parable to the disciples and to us. He drops the hammer. Verse 35. This is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother or sister from your heart.
It's a mic drop moment. There is no wiggle room there, he says, from your heart, meaning it's not just about saying the words. It has to be a genuine release of the debt.
It goes right back to the prayer he taught them, doesn't it? Forgive us our debts as we also have forgiven our debtors. We pray that all the time, but I don't think we realize we are basically praying a conditional curse on ourselves. We're saying, God, please treat me with the exact same measure of mercy that I show to that person at work who annoys me.
And when you put it like that, it's terrifying. But it's also the key to our freedom to forgive. Why do I forgive you? It's not because you deserve it. You might be a complete jerk. You might totally owe me the 100 denarii. I forgive because when I look at the ledger of my own life, my debt to a holy God, I see 10,000 talents written in red ink, and then I see the words paid in full stamped across it because of Jesus.
And once you realize you've been forgiven, 200,000 years of debt, choking someone over 3 months of debt just looks stupid.
It looks insane. It looks like you didn't understand what happened to you in the first place. An unforgiving Christian is a contradiction in terms. It's like a pardoned death row inmate complaining that someone else got a parking ticket waived.
Yeah.
It shows you have amnesia about your own salvation.
Wow. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. I want to try to synthesize this because, like you said at the very beginning, this isn't just a random collection of sayings. It's a single flowing argument. It's a constitution.
It is. There's a clear logic to it.
It starts with humility, the fundamental requirement for entry, the call to make that U-turn, to stop climbing up and to start climbing down, becoming dependent like a child.
Then it moves to care. Because we are a community of these little ones, we have to be fiercely protective of each other's spiritual well-being. We avoid the millstone by ruthlessly removing the stumbling blocks from our own lives and not putting them in front of others.
Then restoration. When someone in the community wanders, we don't write them off as a 1% loss. We chase the one lost sheep. And when someone sins against us, we don't cancel them online. We go to them privately and begin the hard work of winning them back.
And finally, the engine that powers the whole system, mercy. We live and breathe as people who have been forgiven an unpayable astronomical debt, and so we freely and continuously extend that same forgiveness to others.
It's a beautiful vision for a community, but it's so hard.
It is impossible. On our own strength, with our human instincts, we can't do it. We want the status. We want the revenge. We want to keep score. Which is why that verse about the empty chair, there am I in the midst of them, is so critical. We need his presence, his authority, and his power to actually live this out.
So as a final thought for you, the listener, the next time you walk into a meeting, or the next time you get into a fight with your spouse, or the next time you feel that urge to choke someone over a debt they owe you, remember the math. Remember the 10,000 talents versus the 100 denarii. Remember the child. And maybe, just maybe, visualize that empty chair.
How would it change things if you knew he was right there listening? That's the challenge.
Thank you so much for breaking this down for us. I feel like I need to go sit in a quiet room and think about millstones and my own debts for a while.
Just probably stay away from the sea for a bit.
Will do. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.